Today we're going to talk about the 4 different types of firearms, the 4 overarching categories, the big picture categories of firearms. They are handguns or pistols, rifles, shotguns, and AR or BB guns. And we're going to take a look at how they're used, why they're used, and a little bit about each one. Handguns are your first category that we're going to talk about. They were originally designed for self-defense. That was their original purpose. They're small, compact. It's basically you can hold and fire a handgun in one hand. That's kind of its purpose. And it does have the ability to fire multiple shots. There's 2 different kinds of handguns. The Revolver, which is the older version, and the Semiautomatic pistol, which is the newer version of the handgun. So we're going to take a look at both of them. The first one we're going to look at is the Revolver. The Revolver is the older style of handgun. You can have a single or double action. Okay, so right here. Single action means you have to cock the hammer, and this down here is the hammer. You have to kind of pull it back, and then you have to pull the trigger in order to fire the weapon. A double action will allow you to pull the trigger. It'll automatically cock the hammer and fire the weapon. So it's kind of all in one shot. So the double action kind of does everything together a little bit. The single action, you kind of have to do it step by step. Revolvers also have no safety. A safety is a mechanism on the gun that allows the gun not to be fired if the safety is on. And when the safety is off, it allows it to be fired. Revolvers do not have this option. So revolvers do not have a safety. They also have what's called a cylinder. A cylinder is what holds the bullets on a revolver. Or sorry, I should say the ammunition. This is what the cylinder looks like right here. Okay, it usually can hold between 5 and 8 bullets inside the cylinder. And because they are inside the cylinder, here's what it looks like on an inside view right here. The revolvers do not eject any shell casings, which is bad news in terms of forensics because the shell casings can be used to help identify a weapon. And when somebody's using a revolver at a crime scene, all the shells stay inside the weapon, so there's less evidence left behind. They are oftentimes considered more accurate and reliable than semi-automatic pistols just because there's less automatic parts to them. So here's a revolver diagram so you can kind of see inside. Here's the cylinder, the barrel of the gun, etc., etc. And feel free to pause the video if you need to take a look deeper at that. The second type of handgun that's out there is called a semi-automatic pistol. This is a more modern design. The semi-automatic part is right here. When you pull the trigger, it shoots a cartridge. So it takes a cartridge and the bullet gets shot out the barrel of the gun. It ejects the cartridge case, the leftover piece, and reloads the gun all automatically. It uses the recoil energy of the gun to eject the empty cartridge, load the next cartridge, and cock the hammer so it's ready to go for the next shot. All of that's kind of happening. That's why it's called semi-automatic, because that's all happening kind of in one foul swoop. Semi-automatic pistols have varied safeties. Okay, so varied abilities to put a safety on and not fire the gun if needed. It can hold between 5 and 19 rounds in what's called a magazine or a clip. And here is the magazine right here, and it usually goes into the bottom of the gun. And semi-automatic pistols eject their cartridge cases when fired. So the cartridge cases usually come flying out the side after the bullet has been fired out the barrel of the gun. They're considered a little bit more temperamental, more likely to malfunction just because of all of the stuff that's going on inside every single shot. If anything gets jammed or budged or anything like that, they have the ability to malfunction easier than revolvers do. Okay, these are probably the most common weapon used in crime scenes currently are semi-automatic pistols. They're easy to conceal, they're easy to use, so on and so forth. So that's your first category is handguns. And here's a semi-automatic pistol diagram. So this is the inside, and you can see here's where your ammunition goes. When your bullet's fired, your cartridge gets ejected right there. And then here's what the outside looks like. So your second category is going to be rifles. The original purpose of rifles was to be used for hunting. That was the kind of original use of them. They're also used for military purposes, etc. these days. Rifles have a longer barrel and what's called a buttstock. The longer barrel right here allows for a more accurate shot when you're shooting things from further distances. And then the buttstock helps with the recoil because these are more powerful weapons than handguns are. They have a greater recoil, that back pull. And so that goes on your shoulder and helps with that. Rifles are harder to carry and conceal in terms of crime scenes. Like, it would be very challenging for you to walk into a restaurant or walk into a location and somebody not know you're carrying a rifle. They're not very easy to conceal. However, they're more accurate and they shoot more powerful cartridges than handguns. Most recently, crimes that have occurred using rifles, think of like the Las Vegas shooter, right? He had several rifles, high-powered rifles, and he was using them to hit his targets from long distances. So those would be the types of crimes you were looking at when you're looking at rifles being involved. And here's a rifle diagram. Okay, you can see you've got quite a bit longer barrel. Sights, this helps people so that they can see far distances, so on and so forth. The third category of weapons are called shotguns. Shotguns are a little bit different than rifles. Sometimes they look similar, but their insides aren't. There's no rifling inside the barrel of a shotgun. It's smooth, and we'll talk more about barreling in a little bit. And shotguns also shoot projectiles called slugs, which is different ammunition than what rifles or handguns use. Okay. A slug is a container packed with large or small pellets. So it's a container that has a whole bunch of tiny little pellets in it, and when they get shot out of the barrel of the shotgun, they kind of spread out. The point or the purpose to use a shotgun is they're meant to hit small moving targets. So think like rabbits or birds or different things like that. So the pellets allow for kind of a spray of ammunition in an area, which gives you a greater chance to hit your target. As far as being used in crimes, a lot of times you don't see shotguns used in a crime scene setting. If you do happen to see somebody that's been shot with a shotgun, it's very noticeable because they cause a lot of damage. So it's a unique situation when you see a shotgun being used at a crime scene. Okay. And then the fourth category of firearms is AR BB guns, which seems like kind of a useless category. However, they can look very similar to actual rifles or shotguns, and so it's nice to know what they are. AR BB guns, the difference between those and an actual rifle is what they use to propel out their ammunition. And in this case, they're going to use either pressurized air, spring compression, or carbon dioxide cartridges. So as you can see, it looks similar to a rifle, but it usually has an orange tip right here, and that'll be your giveaway that it is either an air or a BB gun. They can be potentially dangerous because you can still get hurt with an air BB gun if used improperly. So those are your four categories. Okay, you've got handguns, rifles, shotguns, and then air BB guns. The last thing we're going to talk about is we're going to hit some vocabulary, some gun vocabulary, just to make sure you kind of understand. Rifling, we talked a little bit about this when we said shotguns don't have any rifling. Well, handguns and rifles do. When they make the barrels of a gun, they drill out a solid steel bar, and those drill marks are left on the inside surface of each barrel, and that's a unique characteristic to each gun. Manufacturers also cut out designs within the barrel of the gun. It's a spiral set of grooves that help to catch the bullet and twist it so that it is more accurate. So it leaves behind grooves on the inside surface of each barrel. And then the left behind pieces are the lands. So right here is a groove, okay? And then the big piece that's left behind is a land. So this is a groove, a groove, a groove, and the inside areas are lands. And that'll be important when we get talking about individual and class characteristics of bullets and cartridges. So when bullets travel down the barrel of the gun, it catches the grooves and it gets guided down the barrel of the gun. It spirals, and the spiral allows for a more accurate shot. The last thing that you want to take a look at is the difference between what's called caliber and gauge. When you're talking about the caliber of a weapon, it's the diameter of the gun barrel measured between opposite lands. So you're looking from one land to the other side, okay, the diameter across. It's measured either in hundredths of an inch or in millimeters, depending on the manufacturer of the weapon. So like a 22 or a 38, that's 22 hundredths of an inch or 38 hundredths of an inch or 9 millimeters. It's not an exact number, it's more of a range. Okay, so when you talk about a 22 caliber, if you measure it and it's like 0.224, something like that, that's okay. So caliber is used oftentimes for handguns and rifles, but for shotguns, they use what's called gauge. So you can have like a 12 gauge shotgun or a 16 gauge shotgun. And a gauge is the number of lead balls with the same diameter as the barrel that would make a pound. So for example, a 12 gauge shotgun has an inside diameter, the inside of the gun, equal to that of a lead ball that weighs 1/12 of a pound. So that's how they determine what a gauge is. This is probably the important thing to write down for gauge. The higher the gauge, the smaller the barrel of the gun. Okay, the higher the gauge, the smaller the barrel of the gun. So a 16 gauge shotgun is going to have a smaller barrel than a 12 gauge is. So feel free to review any of this information before you head on to take the quiz.